cuts that you're going to have to institute because the Reflex issue went?
Well, I mean, the reality is we knew. I told council 3 months ago that we were going to be million short. This was one part of our alternative budget. Some of it's went through already. Some of it's still in limbo. This was one of the bigger ticket items, so it hurt towards our budget. That's for sure. We're going to probably review where we're at, try to figure out how close we are to how much we've closed the gap, and then it's just going to be unless somebody can come up with other revenue streams, then we'll have to cut services. I mean that's our options. Raise revenue or cut services. We don't have choice.
Okay.
So,
how soon do you think you'll make a determination?
Well, we have a pretty good idea right now, and we're going to formalize some of these numbers, kind of give us an update based on where we were from 3 months ago to now. We've got 3 more months worth of income tax revenue. We've gotten a little further on a few other areas. So I think what will happen is we'll have to calculate that. And then we're also very close to asking the departments to prepare their preliminary budgets for 2013 anyway. And the instructions may come with how much we're expecting each department to have to cut in order to make it, unless something else comes about. So the early part of this is start planning for the reductions, and then as we get closer at the end of the year, the numbers will get closer. We might plan for, let's say, a $2 million shortfall, and in December we may be $1.5 million short, or maybe $2.5 million short. And so the actual cuts will be determined based off the real numbers, which we won't know for another couple of months when the auditor certifies it. So we'll start preparing now for reduced services. Unless between now and the end of the year somebody else comes up with another revenue stream, that's our only option.
Are there any off-limits areas in terms of prospective cuts?
Well, the problem is it's general fund. And so, if you look at the fund accounting of the city of Canton, we have the water department funds, the sanitation funds, sewer, the economic development funds, capital funds. Those all are specifically used for different things. The general fund pays for general operations, including police and fire services, which occupies 2/3 of the spending. So 2/3 of our general fund money goes towards safety. So if I lose $1, I've just lost 70 cents towards safety, on average. The problem is we're coming off of 4 years of cuts. And so, the council chambers is down to a bare minimum in reference to staffing. The mayor's office is down to a bare minimum. The law director is down to a bare minimum. If we start reducing staff from where we are now, and the auditor, the treasurer, the law director, the mayor's office, all those different departments, we're going to make those offices dysfunctional because there's just not enough people even to answer the phones or process a piece of paper. So there's very little areas to cut outside of some of the larger departments. And the two largest are police and fire, and you got health, courts. The bottom line is there's not a whole lot of places to go.
Council President Shulman just told me had it been a 6-6 situation, he very likely was going to vote with the administration.
Yeah, this was a close vote. We knew that if we had the 6 votes, that we'd likely have the tiebreaker to allow this to move forward.
And how much lobbying did you do with the voting councilmen?
I talked to only a couple of members that were on the fence that were going. You talked to them on Friday and they're leaning for it. Then you talked to them Saturday and they're leaning against it. So we had a couple of follow-up conversations. I talked to 2 members today, and some of the new members that were on the fence, and just let them know. Make sure you understand exactly what you're doing here. Not only can we address the safety issues, but this is about revenue as much as anything. And if we turn this down, you're telling me that you'd rather us cut services than have traffic cameras that brought in revenue to keep the services. Because that's really the option. It's the revenue covers services, the lack of revenue doesn't. So I'm going to make sure you understand the repercussions of this. That's why, 3 months ago, I put council on notice that we had a shortfall coming, and that I put together the alternative budget plan as options to prevent us from either layoffs or raising taxes. The tax issue is off the table because we can't get there in November, and the soonest we can get on the ballot would be May, and by the time it goes into effect, it wouldn't help us in 2013 now anyway. So our options now are revenue generating or cuts.
So you're telling me that the key was with among the 4 new council people?
Well, there were 7 members that voted no. If one of those 7 would have changed their votes, Alan would have been tiebreaker. So it was very close. And again, on any given day when we were talking, There were some times where there were 6 or 7 on favor, sometimes 5. We figured the vote count was probably going to be 5 to 7. That was the
Either
range.
way,
Yeah, and we knew it could go either way, and it depended on which way the wind was blowing that minute. When I don't know what the final decisions were, but believe me, this is a very, very difficult thing for these council members to be in. They're representing wards. They got people in the wards that say they don't like this, they don't like that, but they also are responsible for the impact of the city's revenue that impacts the whole city and our safety forces. So, do you take a ward issue where in your neighborhood say I don't like it, and you put more weight on that when the city is in a position where we could be hurt by $1 million of the revenue? Or do you say, the good of the city is going to outweigh my local, but I may not get reelected? And so that's the problem, these councilmen had to decide. And, some of the council members were clear that they really wanted them, and some were very strongly against it. And then there was the few in the middle that were trying to figure it out. It is what it is. We knew when we put the alternative budget plan together that these were the most likely proposals that we could get through council because of the interview process that I had with every member when we started. These were the ones that at least the majority of council members said that they would consider. And so we didn't come out with this because we were trying to convince people. We came out with it because the majority of council members said they would consider this as an option. But of course, the devil's in the details, and once everything comes out, there's reasons why they go different directions.
As far as revenue projections, I know you said it'll be, I think, a couple months before the auditor's office revisits the certificate, but do you have a revised or updated shortfall estimate for 2013? 3.7 million.
I'm sorry, Sandy, I'll be just a minute.
3.7 million is what you used in your budget.
Yeah, we know that we have been able to reduce that number over the last 3 months. We've obviously we've passed a number of ordinances and we've made a few adjustments, and so we expect that number has come down. The exact number we don't know. I told Joe after today, Joe, the finance director, after today's vote, we'll be able to calculate some number for this, either 0 or whatever we would anticipate it to be. And so now we can actually say, okay, well, that's one item, we'll check that one off and go to the next one. And there's not a whole lot of unknowns left in reference to can we get this done or not. There's still a few proposals we're working on. And there's still some other items on the list that we haven't brought to council yet that are smaller items, so rate changes and some other things, smaller items. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at the revenue that's come in over the last 4 months. We're going to look at the carryover number. The carryover number is actually growing because we've done a number of things. For example, the utility or the street lighting, we passed that last month, and so that money now is being paid for out of capital. So the money that we budgeted for general fund is now basically going into the carryover, and so we're seeing that happen. And so there are some positives. There's a couple of negatives out there. If you saw the newspaper story about the casino money being half of what they projected, what a surprise. Yeah, we were projecting half all along because they were showing us with casinos only, and then if we had the racinos. Right. And so we knew if the racinos came, which they already had been approved. So once that happened, those numbers got adjusted. We basically projected with the racinos. And so, that money is still going to be helpful, but it's not anywhere near. In fact, it's half of what they claimed it was going to be a year ago. So we're trying to calculate all that. I would say that within a few days or maybe next week, we'll have an up-to-date projection. I didn't want to do it until this was one of the big items on the list. But I would say that that we may have cut that deficit by 40% so far, maybe even closer to 50%, which still means we're roughly $2 million short. Mm-hmm. This would have been a big dent in the last part of this thing.
Is this devastating the traffic?
Well, it's not devastating, but it's disappointing because my own personal opinion, I'd much rather enforce traffic rules and collect money for those that are breaking the traffic laws than raise taxes on people or cut services.
Kind of like a sin tax, isn't it?
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. You do wrong, you pay. And oh, by the way, I certainly think that's a better option than having to reduce my number of police and firemen or safety forces or any employees, especially at a time when every week people are coming here saying, "Hey, we need safer streets. We need more police officers." Right. Well, okay, we need more police officers. One of our council members over there talking about how we need to do anything we can to get more police officers. well, this was a $1 million ticket that he voted against.
Yeah. Does this kind of set you up, though, Canton, for a tax increase then next year?
Well, the problem is it doesn't help us in 2013. So what it really sets us up for is a reduction in services. And then we'll have to go back to the drawing board and determine whether or not we want to talk to the public about, are you satisfied with less services, or do you want to address that?
One final question.
Yeah.
Is Reflex dead forever?
Yeah, this is the second time, I think. In 4
Yeah,
years.
well, I mean, it was
5 years.
quite a different proposal this time in reference to the process and how it went about. We had a committee together that included Dave Doherty from council, the chief, the traffic engineer, the safety director, and the assistant safety service director. They did this. They communicated with the police. I mean, we had the police chief and the police union supporting it. We had the Canton City Schools supporting it, saying, hey, we want our schools safer. When you've got the schools saying, make our school zone safer, and the police saying, we want this to help us, and council didn't approve it, I'm not sure there's a whole lot else you could put on the table that would get council on board. Okay. But on the other hand, we were only one vote off. Okay. So we don't have to convince all the council.
So you could try it again?
I would say that we're going to look for all options. I would say that this is, if it's not dead, it's on life support at this point in reference to whether we're able to come back anytime in the near future.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And on the police and fire, how high is the likelihood that, given right now what you know, that there will be layoffs in police and fire next year? Can you say at this point how high?
I would say that the odds are incredibly high.
The odds are incredibly high.
Yeah, I mean, we still have a couple more months to try to find other solutions, but we put all remember, we had those finance meetings that we went on for about 6 months where we brought in council, we brought in every department head, we brought in the union leaders, community, neighborhood association folks, all the administration, and we basically asked everybody for any idea, no matter how crazy it was. And we compiled a list of these ideas, and we took those and we used those to put together our package saying, here's what's left that anybody and everybody can come up with that are legitimate, doable ideas. And there's not a lot out there left. So if there's other things out there that people or council or anybody else can come up with, we're all ears. But, the list has basically, it's run its course. There's only a couple items left, and it doesn't amount to the $2 million shortfall or whatever it is. Okay. So unless we have an incredibly strong economic recovery here in the next 4 months, I don't think that we're going to close that gap.
Yeah, or if the state government would reverse their stance.
Well, at this point, I guess we can go to wishing and dreaming, I guess.
Right, right. So I take it you share Alan Schulman's passion about state government and how they've abandoned urban areas of Ohio.
Here's the interesting part. When the recession hit the city of Canton, the greatest recession in history outside of the Depression, when the recession hit, we lost $4 million in income tax revenue from 2007 to 2010. The reduction was $4 million over that 2.5-year slump. So we lost $4 million. Now, in 2011, we started getting the recovery, and our revenue went back up. In 2012, we're almost at the 2007 numbers, which means from an economic standpoint, we've recovered the losses. Okay, so we had a $4 million hit that lasted over a 3-year period. The governor's impact on us is greater. We've got about a $5 million reduction between the state and federal cuts, mostly the state issues, and they're permanent. There's no recovery. We're not going to get this back a year from now, 2 years from now. These are gone forever. Right. The impact of the state government has been more dramatic and more painful and more hurtful to our citizens than the Great Recession. That's sad.